Good morning, Chair. Today we return to hearing evidence from the bereaved families of those who died while under the care of trusts in Essex. This morning we will hear from Daniel Leader, who will be giving evidence about his brother Josh Leader, who died on the 24th of November 2020, aged 35. His evidence will be followed by Melanie Leahy, who will be giving evidence about her partner, Colin Flatt, who died on the 7th of September 2021, aged 81. Both sessions will include details of the care and treatment received by those who died and will also include some detail of how they died. There may be aspects of today's evidence that are difficult to listen to. Understandably, there may be some for whom it may not be possible to sit through two sessions. As with other days, anyone in the inquiry room should feel free to leave at any time. May I take this opportunity to remind those engaging with the inquiry that emotional support is available for all who require it. Present here again today are emotional support staff from Hestia, an experienced provider of emotional support. They are currently in this room and can be identified by their orange-coloured scarves. There is a private room downstairs where anyone who needs emotional support can talk to Hestia support staff in private. If you prefer, you can speak to a member of the inquiry team and we will put you in touch with the emotional support staff. We are all wearing purple-coloured lanyards. For those following the hearing online, information about the emotional support that is available can be found on the Lampard Inquiry website, and that's at lampardinquiry.org.uk. The support tab is near the top right-hand corner. We want everyone engaging in this inquiry, in whatever way, to feel safe and supported. Chair, we are now ready to hear from our first witness this morning. Daniel would like to be referred to by his first name and for Josh to be referred to by his first name. And he would like to take the oath and swear on the Bible. So if that can be done now, please.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Now, Daniel, we heard from your brother Samuel on the 26th of November 2024. He spoke about Josh and his life, and obviously Josh's death does not define him. How he lived his life does. Now, you are here today to speak about your experience of Josh's treatment and care. As I said in the introduction, Josh died on the 24th of November of 2020. He was just 35 years aged at the time of his death. He died by suicide. Now, you've provided two statements to the inquiry, one dated the 14th of July 2025 and a second dated the 8th of October 2025. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you had an opportunity to read both statements recently?
I have, yes.
And can you confirm that the contents are true and accurate?
I can confirm that.
Thank you very much. Now, Josh is your younger brother by 13 years. You describe at paragraph 4, page 1 of your witness statement, a parent-child relationship with him. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I mean, there was a significant age gap, and as time went on and we grew older, the relationship was less of a sibling relationship and more of one of me offering guidance and support to him, in addition to the support provided by my parents. And that kind of went on and on as his difficulties grew from adolescence onwards.
And I wonder if we can have up on screen, just to help those following, paragraph 6, page 1 of your witness statement. You describe here in your statement a traumatic incident when Josh was 12 or 13 years old. But it was not until he was in sixth form that his mental ill health manifested. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, he was a very happy young boy. Things were basically going fine, even despite this incident, until he went to sixth form college, and then things went seriously awry.
Roughly how old would he have been at that time? 17, 18?
I'd say 16 onwards.
Paragraph 7, page 2, perhaps we can have that displayed. You describe here that he was becoming involved in a bad crowd, taking drugs, in particular cannabis, including skunk. Is that right?
That's right, yes. And that was the first time I think he had tried it, and something clicked in his brain in a bad way, and he had a complete mental breakdown.
So just explain to us then, if you're able to say whether there was any link between his mental ill health and taking skunk, for example.
I mean, it seemed to me, and I think to others, it seemed that it was caused by his drug taking. That there was, that had done something, it just did not agree with him. And it resulted in serious mental illness from a very early stage.
You describe at paragraph 7, page 2 of your statement, some of his symptoms, such as serious paranoia and psychosis. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, before that, he was a very confident young man, had absolutely no issues whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, he felt he was being persecuted. People were picking him out in crowds. That at one point, he said people were revving cars on the street just to upset him. I mean, things that were completely off the wall. And he just stopped going out. He just couldn't leave the house for some time.
I want to turn to events in 2005, paragraph 8, page 2 of your statement. You describe here how Josh first became known to Essex Partnership University NHS Trust, EPUT, in 2005, and that was via the Community Mental Health Services. Is that so?
That's right. That's correct.
You summarise at paragraph 9 of your statement that he went to the lakes at one point in Colchester with self-inflicted injuries to his wrists, and that he also received treatment for his mental health in France for a period of time. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, I can't date precisely when that was. There was quite a long period when he was at Bath University, and then back and forth from Colchester. He remained in the EPUT system. I don't think it was called EPUT then, as far as I remember, his predecessor. But, I mean, the experience we had was it was very difficult to get any proper psychiatric supervision from him, and we were dealing with people who were just trying to get us off their books, as it were. So, you know, when he went to the lakes, he had shown slit wrists, or there were attempts to slit his wrist, and was sent back without admission or any further care, as I recall it. I mean, I don't have all the details of that incident.
Yeah. And you're quite right to make that distinction that it wasn't known as EPUT at that time, that there was a merger that subsequently happened, I think, in 2017.
That's right, yeah.
At paragraph 11, page 3 of your statement, you talk about an event in 2010 to 2011.
Yeah.
Whilst Josh was in Peru, and this resulted in him being brought back to the UK by his family. And he was taken to the Accident and Emergency Department at the Whittington Hospital, where he was sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, he went to Peru because he thought he could cure himself by taking this ayahuasca, which I'd never heard of, which is a plant-based hallucinogen. And my brother had to go and get him and bring him back. and he was in a complete state. And we took him to the Highgate Mental Health Institute, which is part of the Whittington in North London, and he was sectioned immediately.
Yeah. And for those that might not be familiar, geographically, whereabouts is the Whittington Hospital?
It's Archway, North London.
Staying with paragraph 11, page 3 of your statement, you describe how he was transferred to Highgate Mental Health Centre in London, and he was detained there for a period of time. And then there came a time when Josh received treatment for his mental health in New York, France, Colchester, and Chelmsford. Is that so?
Yes, I mean, I think it's important to explain to you, Chair, that part of his symptoms was that he persistently was trying to flee, and he thought that getting away to some far-flung part of the world, there would be solutions there. So he went to, I mean, all over the place, but I think he went to a Buddhist center in upstate New York. He went to Peru, as I said, and then separately he had spent some time living in France as well, and was part of the mental health. He was in the mental health services there for a while as well.
Yeah. And this endeavour to flee was that related to the paranoia that you described?
Yes, he would feel increasingly persecuted wherever he was, and so he thought, if I just go to such and such a place, things will be different, and I can try something different, and I can find a solution to my problems. And as I will explain, that was part of the cycle we had, is that he didn't want to take his medication. So, and when he stopped taking his medication, he became progressively more and more unwell and more psychotic, but in ways that were sometimes difficult to immediately ascertain, because he was quite sophisticated at disguising his psychosis. And so he would come up with these completely harebrained schemes of going to various parts of the world where solutions would be found. And then when he was back on his medication and stabilized, he would then regain insight, recognize that he had been completely ridiculous in what he had been planning, and was stable for some time. But it was a perpetual cycle that we were living with, where he was stable when he was on medication and then completely went off the map when he was off his medication.
I'm going to pick up on a couple of points that you've just mentioned there. You've talked about medication. I wonder if we could unpack that slightly.
Yeah.
So paragraph 16, page 4, just to help orientate you really to where we are in your statement, and for those who are following your witness statement as well. You describe antipsychotic medication. Josh was prescribed antipsychotic medication, is that correct?
That's right, yes.
And can you recall, you may not be able to, when he was first prescribed it?
As I recall from quite an early age, I think while he was at Bath University or even before then, he was regularly getting psychiatric supervision.
And was it prescribed as a tablet as opposed to a liquid, for example?
It was a tablet.
Recognising, as I do from what you say in your witness statement, that Josh was someone whose mental health fluctuated, if I was to ask you to summarise his symptoms whilst on the medication, how would you describe it? You touched upon this already in terms of insight. Can you just expand a little bit more about how was Josh when he was on his medication from your perspective?
He went through long periods of stability where he was able to function reasonably well. He even, for a time, was living with me in London and was working for a time, and he was able to cope with that. And so it was really when he was off his medication that things went badly wrong.
And how did they go badly wrong when he was off his medication?
So the same things would happen again and again. He would start getting more and more paranoid, more and more, he would have these views that he actually had some kind of genetic or physical disorder, and he would look up various things on the internet and deny to himself that he had mental illness.
So would you say that he lacked insight into his own mental ill health?
Yes, so catastrophically lacked insight. But when he was off the medication, when he was on the medication, he had insight.
And was it really that stark?
Yes, yeah, it was. I mean, there were prolonged periods of time where he was reasonably stable. Particularly when he was living in France and he was getting regular psychiatric supervision. And then he would come off his medication, start telling himself he didn't really have mental illness, and then the paranoia would start, the desire to flee would start, the desire to get some kind of medical tests. I mean, it varied from genetic disorders. At one point he said he had mercury poisoning from a filling he had had. That was the cause. And I think the professionals ran all kinds of medical tests to prove him that that wasn't the case.
Yeah. And just explain for us the context. When Josh was explaining this, that he believed he had a genetic disorder, for example, and that was to account for his ill health, how did he express that to others who didn't perhaps know him?
Well, he would say, I don't think I'm psychotic. I don't think this medication agrees with me. I think this is the problem I have, X, Y, Z, and I will need some tests to be run on that. And if you don't do that, you're denying me my ability to heal and get better.
Was he, if you're able to say this, I don't know, but was he quite convincing?
Oh, he's extremely convincing. Oh, yeah. No, repeatedly. Yeah. No. People would completely fall for his narrative. All kinds of, very sophisticated people would fall for his narrative.
And so was it overtly obvious that this was somebody who was living with mental ill health?
No, I mean, this is very important. And so I would say to the professionals, you need to ask him very precise questions to find out precisely what's going on here. So what is he feeling about living in the community? How are other people perceiving him? How is he sensing his own physical health at the moment? And then if you asked him those very precise questions, it would become clear that he was actually very psychotic. And there's an incident with Professor Soames, which I will go into, where that's an illustration of precisely that point.
We'll return back to this topic in a moment. Just sticking with the chronology, I'd like to ask you next about summer of 2018. And for those following your statement, this is paragraph 18, page 4.
Yeah.
You refer to an incident in the summer of 2018 where Josh had expressed suicidal ideation whilst he was overseas in France. Was that the first time, so far as you were aware, that he had expressed suicidal ideation?
As far as I recall, yes, I think that's right.
Can you...
First time I remember, and he sent it in a text to the family.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that incident?
Yes, so we were all in France. He was staying apart in a different location because we were concerned that he was not very well, and we had children with us, so we decided that it would be best if he didn't join the wider family. And he then sent a text saying, I'm feeling suicidal. So we then called the police, who then instantly reacted. That night they went into where he was staying. They took him immediately to the mental health services, and then he was sectioned for 10 days. And after that, he stabilised for a period and came back to the UK.
Okay, and following on from that, again, sticking with summer of 2018, paragraph 19 of your statement, page 4, you refer to a letter that I think your father wrote, and I'm just going to ask that that's displayed. It's at page 5. The substance of the letter is at page 5. This is a letter that was written to his psychiatrist, whose care Josh was under at the Lakes Mental Health Hospital. Can you explain to us what prompted the family to write this letter?
So this is when he was back in the UK, and I think he had had an incident in Colchester Town Centre where he had been in public and was plainly psychotic. And was pretending to be blind, I think, and reciting verses from Macbeth. I wasn't there, but that's what I was told. So then my father then wrote to the hospital, the Lakes, where all the symptoms I'm describing about his regular pattern of thinking he had some kind of illness and he could be treated better somewhere else are clear. He thought he had Klinefelter's syndrome and that he would be better treated in Israel. He thought he wanted to go there. And so it was an explanation as to this cycle that my father was setting out for the benefit of the psychiatrist at EPUT.
Okay. And so it's probably obvious, but just tell us, please, what did you as a family hope to achieve by sending this letter to his psychiatrist?
Well, by this stage, the cycle was clear, and we thought there needed to be a proper evaluation of how we come up with a strategy to end this cycle. And he needed to be stabilised on his medication, but then we needed to come up with a strategy as to how this was going to stop, because it was becoming absolutely exhausting and unsustainable. And that's what my father wrote. We feel strongly that Joshua must be detained long enough to be stabilised on his medication, otherwise we will see an unending cycle of successive delusions and extreme behaviour, and he will continue to pose a threat to himself and to others. And that historically, after a period of taking his medication, he gains insight into his mental condition and is able to care for himself and relate well with his network and friends and family. So there it was, very, very clearly set out as to what the cycle was that we were dealing with.
I just wonder whether you can give us some context in terms of his treatment and care at this stage. Was he having regular appointments with the psychiatrist, so far as you were aware?
In 2018, I wasn't involved in his detailed day-to-day care at that stage. So I don't know how much input he was getting from EPUT.
Okay.
But I do know that after he had been detained for a period, he regained insight and was reasonably stable for a little bit after that.
Okay. I want to move to paragraph 21 of your statement, if it helps you answer my next question. But following this letter being sent by the family, what, if anything, happened?
Well, he was admitted voluntarily to the Lakes.
I think that's the Gosfield ward at the
Yeah.
Lakes Mental Health Hospital.
That's right.
And this was now under EPUT.
This was now under EPUT.
And at paragraph 22, page 5 of your statement, you say that he was discharged on the 10th of September of 2018 with medication, an antipsychotic, antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication. That's at page 6, top of page 6.
That's right.
And then from late 2018, you became the primary contact for his care, is that right?
That's right, yes.
I just want to ask, recognising as I do that you weren't the primary contact at this time with regards to the discharge, but can you recall if the family had any views about his discharge at that time in September 2018?
I'm trying to remember, is this paragraph 24, is it?
It's just...
No.
If we go to over the page 5, paragraph 22, he'd been an inpatient for several weeks until the 10th of September. That's when he was discharged. And then you give details of his medication at paragraph 23.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was discharged, but there was no... As I say, my mother was the primary, and my father were primarily involved at that stage. I don't think there was any follow-up kind of meeting with the mental health professionals about how we could break the cycle, but I don't know the degree to which they pushed that at that stage.
That's very fair of you to say. Can I turn then to paragraph 24, page 6? You describe how in late 2018 or possibly early 2019, Josh's ill health deteriorated and it resulted in an admission to the University College London, where he was detained under the Mental Health Act for much of the early part of 2019. He was then a patient in London at various mental health hospitals that you give details about at paragraph 25.
Yes.
Can you explain to us, to the best of your knowledge, how did Josh feel about that?
About being detained?
Yeah.
Oh, he was very unhappy.
Why was he unhappy?
Because he thought that he wanted to flee. He wanted, this time he had become fixated on Israel as the place he wanted to, that would give him all the solutions he had, so he wanted to go there, and thought that he would get the proper care, and they would discover his genetic or physical disorder that would sort his life out. And so it took a while for him to stabilise while he was under section. And he was sectioned for a long time.
Yeah.
And I attended all those review meetings and the tribunals, and they were difficult.
I'm going to come on to that.
Yeah.
So at paragraph 25 and paragraph 26, this is page 6 of your statement. Thank you, it's on the screen. You give quite a lot of detail around that time, and I just want to unpack some of that if we can. So this relates to his care whilst he was in London, not under an Essex Mental Health Trust, is that right?
That's right, yeah. He was under Camden and Islington at that point.
And I wonder whether you can describe that experience from your perspective. So was it a positive, a negative, or neither, a neutral experience?
Broadly positive. I mean, from the start, we had taken him to UCLH, to A&E. They took it extremely seriously from the start, and they transferred him to the mental health ward at King's Cross. And I remember attending a meeting with several, I think it says 6 healthcare professionals, and they sat me down and they said, you need to understand how unwell your brother is. And the thing you need to understand about your brother is he is able to mask his psychosis extremely effectively. And so it doesn't, which did chime absolutely with our experience. And they were very worried about him. They thought he was extremely unwell. And that was the first time any mental health professional had explained that. But I was impressed at the range of professionals they had in the room and the fact that they had got to grips so quickly with the nature of his mental illness.
Okay, I want to just explore that a little bit more with you, if I may.
Yes.
You said that there were 6 professionals. Was this in one meeting?
This was in one meeting. I mean, I think it was actually more than that. Yes. I mean, it was a big room with lots of different people in it.
And you say a range of professionals. Can you just give us some context as to were they consultant psychiatrists, nurses, or a mix of the two?
Yes, a mix of the two. People from the ward, consultant psychiatrist, nurses, care support workers. It was multidisciplinary. I don't have the details of precisely who was there.
No.
Because I was never told.
And you mentioned they explaining to you that Josh was masking his symptoms. You've described, obviously, that's something that you as a family knew before, but this was the first time that a professional had explained it to you in that way. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And you say that they were extremely concerned about Josh. What did they do as a result of that concern?
They sectioned him.
And this is then following quite a prolonged period of time where he was sectioned. What about family engagement during this period of time? How would you describe the engagement with you and the wider family of Josh in his care at this point in his treatment?
Again, broadly positive. I was invited regularly to all the review meetings by the trust itself. So I was notified when those meetings were going to happen.
How were you notified?
By email or by telephone. I was in regular contact with the ward supervisor, who was updating me regularly on how Josh was doing.
Are you able to give us an idea or a sense of the frequency of that? So regular contact with the ward, would that be weekly or?
I mean, the reviews with the psychiatrist, the ward psychiatrist, the consultant psychiatrists were, I think, weekly. But I was, during this time, more or less in daily contact with the ward. And the issue that I had was that I didn't want him to be, I was very keen to break the cycle. So I was keen for there to be a proper assessment before he was discharged. And ideally, that he should be discharged into some kind of therapeutic community. That's what I was hoping for.
Okay.
So where the only part I'm critical of Camden Islington for failing to do was I don't think that was properly done. And he was discharged into a hotel in Hampstead.
Okay, well, we'll come on to that because at paragraph 28, page 7 of your statement, you make reference there to section 117 of the Mental Health Act 1983, an aftercare assessment plan and funding. Can you just explain for those that might not be familiar with section 117, what was your understanding of that?
So section 117 is people who've been sectioned for more than I think 3 weeks, it might be 2 weeks, are entitled to a comprehensive assessment under the Mental Health Act, as I understand it, where there can be a kind of proper strategic plan that is arrived at by the professionals, because clearly this is a serious case you're dealing with, someone who's extremely unwell. And that's precisely what we had with Josh. We had a repeat cycle. So I was pushing the section 117 hard because I wanted to make sure that we broke the cycle. And that's what I thought we needed. We needed an assessment that looked at Josh holistically, his psychiatric care, his pattern of coming off his medication, the fact that he also needed social support. He needed to get back in. He was a bright guy. He needed to get into some kind of activity, potentially work. We needed to come up with a plan, and I thought section 117 was the way to do that. So I pushed that hard with Camden Islington because he was entitled to it under the Act.
Okay, we're going to come on to that again in a moment, but just at paragraph 30, page 7 of your statement, you say that he was discharged on the 2nd of August 2019 to a hotel. I think you say that's the one aspect that you were critical of, that he was discharged to a hotel. How was Josh after he had been discharged to this hotel?
He was extremely well. He had regained insight. He was happy. He was making sense. He was taking his medication. It was the real Josh.
Can I just interrupt? You were asked about the contact that the ward had with you while he was being treated in Camden, under Camden and Islington, and you describe it as a regular discussion. Did they welcome your engagement with them? Your getting in touch with the ward on a regular basis?
They absolutely did. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. They were keen to. They were also concerned about what his aftercare would look like.
Yeah.
And I remember having conversations with the psychiatrist about that, sometimes with Josh, sometimes without Josh, because I had ongoing consent to speak to the professionals from Josh. And it was productive. I felt listened to.
Thank you.
In strong contrast to all our experience with EPUT.
Just picking up on that, you said you had ongoing consent to be involved in his care. Can you just explain that, please? How did that come about?
Well, I mean, I said to Josh, look, if you want my help, you're going to have to give consent. If you don't want my help, then I'm not going to be able to do anything, so don't give your consent. And he gave his ongoing consent. And I think he gave it in writing.
Okay.
So everyone was clear from the start that he was content for family members to liaise with the professionals. So consent was never an issue with Josh. He was always happy for us to be speaking to the various professionals.
Okay. And so just going back to the discharge then, you described Josh was actually well at this time of discharge. He had insight, and you described seeing the real Josh at that time in the summer of 2019 following his discharge from Camden and Islington. Was he discharged with medication?
Oh, yes.
And was that tablet form medication?
It was. Amisulpride. Aripiprazole.
That's an antipsychotic medication.
Antipsychotic, yeah.
And so just help us, because it's relevant to what you talk about later in your statement. You refer to a depot injection. And I just wonder, can you explain what your understanding of a depot injection is?
So a depot injection, as I understand it, is if there are problems with compliance with medication, antipsychotic medication, it is an option for people to be given the same medication in injection form, and it's longer lasting. And all you need to do is turn up to your appointments and get the injection. And so later on, it became apparent to me that this was perhaps the best option for Josh, given that he kept on coming off and on his medication.
So just...
but at this period, I mean, this was what was difficult with Josh. This period, I mean, he had good mental health that lasted until March 2020. So he had about a 7-month period, where he was really stable and had insight and was taking his medication and was delightful to deal with. And I remember he came for family Christmas at our house in London, and he was extremely well.
Yeah. And so, just for clarity then, was there any discussion about a depot injection in the summer of 2019?
Not that I recall. That came later, when he came off his medication again.
And does it follow, because at this stage he was taking his medication?
That's right.
Okay. Paragraph 31, bottom of page 7 of your statement. Ultimately, Josh moved back to Essex, and his care was transferred back to EPUT in early November 2019. You describe how he was transferred to the North Essex Specialist Psychosis Team, at paragraph 32, page 8 of your statement, you refer to a letter that Josh's psychiatrist in Islington sent to EPUT regarding his Section 117 aftercare. And that letter was the 25th of November 2019. Can you explain if Islington considered that he had needs under Section 117 and he was discharged by them on the 2nd of August of 2019, why that Section 117 aftercare assessment hadn't been done by this point?
I don't know why they didn't do it, because this was something and that's where I am critical of Camden Islington, because they should have done it, and I was certainly pushing it. But I did eventually get a letter from the psychiatrist. Sorry, he was a head of service, I think, quite a senior person who I'd been dealing with in the trust, who then writes a letter to North Essex in the terms set out in my statement, saying that they had assessed that he does have needs requiring Section 117 aftercare, and that it would be appropriate to consider supported accommodation environment, which I think would absolutely have saved Josh had he had that at that stage. That's the kind of input he needed.
We can see this at paragraph 32, the italics of your statement. That's the extract from the letter that you're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah.
So 3 months had elapsed between his discharge and then his care being transferred to EPUT. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And
yes.
Was there a Section 117 assessment within EPUT as far as you're aware?
No. So, I worked hard to get this letter out of Camden Islington. I sent it then to EPUT and to the professional who had day-to-day involvement with Josh. And I then raised it repeatedly with numerous people over the next 12 months. And at no point was anything ever done about this.
Just put into context for us why you felt so strongly about this aftercare assessment. What were you hoping to achieve by having that assessment?
So I thought we needed to take stock, look at the history, understand what we're dealing with here, and come up with a strategy. And that strategy needed to cover psychological care, a proper understanding of what we were dealing with in terms of his medical non-compliance, and also social support around accommodation and activity. And I thought, had we come up with a multidisciplinary package with family input at the start, because we knew Josh better than anyone, then we could have come up with a plan that worked, and EPUT would have known properly what they were dealing with. But because that never happened, EPUT were constantly just crisis managing and never really getting to grips with the nature of Josh's illness. And he was pinging around from one psychiatrist to the other, who were all dealing with crises and never really understood properly what they were dealing with, and were never really interested in listening to what the family had to say. Had that work been done and time been taken at the outset, I'm convinced Josh would still be here, and I think he would have been able to lead a full and thorough and fruitful life. And the irony is, I think EPUT ended up, because of all the crisis management they did, there was a lot more resources that went into dealing with a crisis than had there been a proper planning session at the start where we could have all come up with a plan. So that's why I was so keen to push 117. But it was really like talking into the ether whenever I mentioned it. I mean, I mentioned it with his psychiatrist, I mentioned it with his care supporter. I mean, it's just nothing ever happened. No psychological input, no talking therapies, no analysis of his accommodation, no plan to come up with his medical non-compliance. And so it was a complete mess. The whole thing was a complete mess until his suicide.
Just focusing at this stage, though, you mentioned earlier that actually Josh was quite stable until March 2020. Is that fair?
I would say he was better than stable. He was well.
Yeah.
He was making friends in the community. He was staying with my parents. He'd found himself a flat or a small house. He was going to the gym. My parents had lodgers at the time, one of whom was applying to the Marines, and so he was going to the gym with that guy. And he was really well for about 6 months, and then he stopped taking his medication, and things fell apart.
And I want to move on to ask you about that then. Are you all right to carry on?
Can I just ask you one question? You criticised Camden and Islington for not having done the aftercare. Do you mean by that they had not implemented anything? Because you get them to write a letter in which they make it perfectly plain they think that Josh would benefit from aftercare, including supported accommodation, which suggests that they had undertaken some sort of assessment, but they just hadn't actually implemented it.
Yes, I mean, my hope was that he would have been discharged from Highgate, from the ward, into a therapeutic environment.
Yep.
And so I was not happy that he had been discharged to a hotel room.
No.
And he was still getting some ongoing care, but because he was compliant with his medication, he was stable.
So my interest really is in the question of whether they'd actually done an assessment, and it sounds as though they may well have done an assessment.
Yes, I mean, I never saw the actual assessment.
Right, okay. And you weren't involved in it?
I inputted to them as to what I thought needed to happen, but I never saw the outcome of what precisely they thought needed to happen next.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you.
I'm going to move on to March 2020. Are you all right to carry on?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. So early March 2020, for those following your statement, this is paragraph 36, page 8. You describe Josh's health deteriorating around the March 2020. He stopped taking his medication. And you make reference at paragraph 37, the first COVID-19 lockdown, which took place on the 23rd of March 2020. That's when it was announced. Can you tell us, please, what that was like for Josh and what, if any, impact that had on him?
Well, he started getting very stressed. For understandable reasons. I mean, the whole country was stressed. And he was worried about my parents, and my parents still had these lodgers who they were putting up, and he was worried that they would bring the virus into the house. So he was beginning to get stressed, but it wasn't immediately obvious that he had stopped taking his medication until a few weeks later, when he started to kind of show the classic signs of not being compliant with his medication.
Okay. I'd like to ask you about April 2020, paragraph 39, page 9 of your statement. You refer to an incident on the 10th of April 2020, and I'm just going to ask if that's displayed. It already is. There's a text message that we can see to Josh's care coordinator. Can you tell us about what was going on in that period of time?
Yeah, so at this point, Josh was living on his own. He was isolated. He was not taking his medication. He was not going in to see my parents, even though they lived quite close. But he was plainly unwell and isolated, and was starting to seriously freak out. So it was a very stressful time. My mother was kind of dealing with the brunt of it, and he was, I mean, I say here, he called my mother 40 times in one day in a state of severe distress. And so I said, look, we're all quarantined, we can't move around the country, I'm stuck in London, I'm really worried about this situation, what do we do? I've called the crisis team. They said they were shut over the bank holiday, couldn't do anything, so I just didn't know what to do. If you remember that time, you couldn't actually move around the country. It was I was stuck in London, so I was very, very worried.
On the 15th of April 2020, this is paragraph 41, page 9 of your statement, you sent a further text to his care coordinator.
Yeah.
Josh had a very bad weekend and an ambulance had to be called. He threatened suicide. He seems better now, but it could spiral out of control again at any minute. What can be done? I'm stuck in London. And then paragraph 42, page 9, on or around the 17th of April 2020, you say here that Josh had attended an appointment with his psychiatrist. Was that his regular psychiatrist, and that it was decided at that appointment that Josh should come off his antipsychotic medication due to the side effects that he was reporting? Is that right?
Well, I don't think I'd call anyone a regular psychiatrist, because he was getting kind of snapshots of quick meetings now and again. And so I don't think anyone really had a proper understanding of his illness. And I think that was possibly the second meeting he had with this psychiatrist, who then, because Josh is off his medication, convinced that he has some physical illness and he doesn't want to take medication anymore, she then takes him off his antipsychotics completely.
How did you feel about that when you found out about it?
I was furious. And so I urgently asked to see her. I mean, that was precisely what didn't need to happen at that stage.
And we can see at the top of page 10, we can see a text message that you sent to the care coordinator about that. And just at the bottom of that, it says he's not been taking them, has caused this current spate of serious instability. You say that Josh had seen this psychiatrist maybe twice at this stage, and that you were so concerned you wanted to speak to the psychiatrist. I think at paragraph 44 of your statement at page 10, you make reference to speaking to that psychiatrist on the 20th of April 2020. Can you recall, you may not be able to, who called who? Was it the psychiatrist that called you, or you that called the psychiatrist?
I think she called me, because I wasn't given any numbers, so I don't think I had any ability to access any of the professionals. Everything was through the prism of his care coordinator. Yeah. So that's why all my texts are to him, because I didn't have anyone else I could reach out to.
Just describe to us that interaction with the psychiatrist then. How would you describe it?
I mean, she was perfectly nice, but I felt had absolutely no understanding of his illness, and didn't seem to have read his medical history. And I was kind of having to inform her afresh of everything for the first time.
You say there that she didn't appear to have an understanding or didn't read his notes. I just wonder whether you can, I think you've answered that, but just explain to us what gave you that impression. What are you basing that on?
She didn't understand his history of sectioning, as I understand, of having been sectioned. She didn't realise he had recently been transferred back to EPUT. Didn't realise about the Section 117 issue. Clearly didn't understand about the cycle of non-compliance of medication and illness. So all of this I had to explain from the start. All she had was the one meeting with Josh where he had told her he didn't really want to be on antipsychotics, and she had stopped his antipsychotics.
And
that was it.
As a result of that interaction with her, at one stage you describe towards the bottom of paragraph 44, the psychiatrist described Josh to me as a very interesting case. I just wonder, can you give us some context for that comment?
Yes, I mean, I was slightly thrown by it. I mean, I'm not criticising her for saying that, but she found Josh intriguing. I'm not quite sure why, because I suspect he had presented a very persuasive case as to why he shouldn't be on antipsychotics. And I don't think she quite knew what she was dealing with. I don't think she had a clear idea of the diagnosis and the nature of his illness.
You mentioned diagnosis. Did Josh have a formal diagnosis at this stage?
Well, I mean, as so many mental illnesses, very hard to pin down. So he had been diagnosed previously with schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, depressive illnesses. I mean, it was kind of a personality disorders. It seemed to change depending on which psychiatrist he was speaking to.
At the end of this call with the psychiatrist, what were your expectations?
I mean, again, I raised the Section 117 issue. I said, look, you've had this letter. This is an opportunity for us to break the cycle. He's got a problem with medical compliance. Let's come up with a strategy. So my hope was something would emerge from that, and a proper plan, an opportunity to come up with a plan and a proper assessment, and come up with a care plan in the proper sense of the word, would have resulted in that interaction with her. But all that happened is she re-prescribed the antipsychotic.
Which is what you wanted. You wanted him to be re-prescribed.
Yeah, I mean, that was just the minimum. That was the start, at least put him back on his meds, but we need to come up with a plan, was what I was saying to her. Because otherwise he was just going to stop taking them again, which is what happened.
And let's then move to May 2020, 5th of May, paragraph 46, page 10 of your statement. You say that soon after that, Josh stopped taking his antipsychotic medication again, and you became aware that on the 5th of May 2020, he reported he had stopped taking his medication and had quite a list of side effects, I think, that he had been, or complaints that had arisen from that medication.
Yeah.
Were you present for that appointment?
No, this is the 5th of May. Is that right?
Yes.
I don't think I was, no.
I think if we look at paragraph 47 of your statement, page 11,
Yeah.
You talk about the 6th of May when you travelled to Essex because they were concerned about Josh's behaviour. I think it follows, therefore, that you weren't there on the 5th, but you were there on the 6th, the day after.
Yeah, so I don't think I was invited to that consultation with the psychiatrist on the 5th.
Okay.
But because it was a complete crisis, I had no choice but to travel down to Ivanhoe.
And so you travelled and saw him. I hope you'll forgive me for summarising the next few entries in your statement here. The 11th of May at paragraph 47, page 11, we can see a text message sent to his care coordinator. The bottom of that, it says, this urgently needs to be sorted out. That he'd been off his medication for weeks, and that was on the advice of his psychiatrist. Moving then to the 12th of May at paragraph 48, page 11, a further text message. I'm keen to speak to the consultant. We are very worried. Things are deteriorating fast. He's been off his medication. Do you think we could give the consultant the background? And then a response from the care coordinator on the 13th of May, paragraph 49, page 11. He says, the care coordinator says that Josh told him that he was taking his medication and he had a discussion with the consultant and had arranged a face-to-face appointment on the 21st of May. And then paragraph 50, page 11, if we can, yes, thank you. There is 16th of May, a text message from you. I've just spoken to my parents. We think it's important that the family can feed in our concerns to you and the consultant. We don't think Josh is taking his meds regularly, and we are back to the vicious cycle where Josh is insisting on private medical treatments for imaginary illnesses. We need to break this cycle. Could we perhaps speak next week? And then on the 20th, at paragraph 52, page 12 of your statement, so over the page, you describe a conversation with yourself and the psychiatrist on the 20th of May. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that interaction, if you can recall it?
Yeah, so this was picking up from where I left off with that psychiatrist, and I reiterated my concerns about the vicious cycle and that we really needed to do something. And that's when I raise the possibility of depot injections. And I think that's the first time I raise it. And then I asked again about Section 117 and having an interdisciplinary meeting to come up with a strategy. And the psychiatrist then said, well, look, we need to leave the Section 117 to the care coordinator. He'll come back to you on it. But it was basically setting out in more detail that we needed to come up with a strategy.
Okay. And then there was an appointment on the 21st of May. This is paragraph 50, going back over the page to page 11, on the 21st of May 2020, which you attended. This was yourself, his consultant, so Josh, the consultant, and yourself. Could you summarise for us how that appointment was?
Sorry, which paragraph were you looking at here?
Yes, sorry, paragraph 51, bottom of page 11. There's reference to an appointment on the 21st. So there was, just to put it into chronological context for you, there was the discussion on the 20th, a telephone conversation with the consultant and yourself.
Yes.
And then the following day on the 21st, there was an appointment.
Oh, that's right, and there was a locum psychiatrist there as well on the 21st.
And if we look at paragraph 53, this might help you. Paragraph 53, page 12.
Yes.
Does that help refresh your memory with regards to that appointment? So you say here at paragraph...
So there's no real taking on board what I had inputted, and I think we found out from the notes afterwards, because I don't think it was clear at the time, that their view was that he did not have psychosis, that it was anxiety.
Yeah. You say here, so retrospectively you became aware that it says the consensus of the clinicians appeared to be that Josh was only presenting with signs of anxiety at that stage, not psychosis. You mentioned there was a psychiatrist and a locum consultant psychiatrist who were present. Were there any other clinicians that attended?
To my recollection, there were only those two. So again, complete failure to take on board what I had said to them, and clearly, I don't think they could have read the notes and come to that conclusion. That was simply their impression from the meeting.
Can you put into context for us how long that meeting was?
All these meetings were incredibly short. I mean, 20 minutes, I'd say, roughly.
Okay.
Possibly half an hour at most.
You mentioned earlier that you retrospectively became aware of this decision, that they didn't believe he was psychotic but was suffering with anxiety. Can you help us with whether that explanation was given to you in the meeting at all?
No, that was not said to me at the meeting. My understanding at the time was that the psychiatrist had taken on board what I had said and had a better understanding of what they were dealing with.
Yeah. So what were your expectations for following that meeting then?
So again, my hope was a plan to come up with a strategy to break the cycle, that there would be consideration of depot injections, that there would be an analysis of why he was not complying with his medication. None of that happened.
I want to ask you then about his care plan, Josh's care plan, paragraph 56, page 13.
Yeah.
At the top of that page, you describe being disappointed with his care plan. Can you explain why you were disappointed with it?
Well, I should say I never saw a physical care plan from anyone until the inquest proceedings, when there was disclosure. And when that was disclosed, it was, from my recollection, it was about one line. So it was no care plan as far as I was concerned. And everything I had said had been ignored. So they didn't understand his illness, they'd ignored the Section 117 issue, there was no decision to come up with some kind of strategy holistically to deal with his issues. So it was a care plan of let's just increase his antidepressant medication and that's it, as far as I could tell.
I'm going to move on next to events in the summer of 2020. I think now's a good moment, Chair, for us to take a mid-morning break, perhaps for 15 minutes.
Of course. 15 minutes.
Thank you. Daniel, I was about to turn to the events of summer 2020. To help orientate you, if you have a look at paragraph 66, page 13 of your witness statement, you talk there about events in July. And just before we come on to deal with mid-July, I just want to ask you about the 6th of July. So if we go back over, to paragraph 60, page 13, you sent a text message, if we could have that on the screen. So it's page 13, paragraph 60. You sent a message to Josh's care coordinator on the 6th of July, where you describe Josh in a bad way. It feels like things could blow up at any minute. Can we please find a time to speak as soon as possible? And then back over the page, please. Paragraph 63. In July of 2020, you explain on the 15th, I believe, that there was an appointment with Josh's psychiatrist. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you didn't attend that meeting on the 15th?
So I wasn't told about it. I mean, this was a regular occurrence where I would only find out from Josh, who was in a complete state when these various appointments were happening, and they weren't communicated to me. So they would often be an appointment that would arrive. Josh would take it on his own. I would then find out after the event what was going on, and then had to ask for a further appointment so I could actually try and undo the damage which had been done at that meeting. So again, I don't think I was told about this meeting.
Can I just ask then, in terms of earlier in your evidence, you spoke about there being written consent that you had asked Josh to give in terms of your attendance and his consent to you being involved in his care. That was at a time when he was at Islington. What was the position so far as EPUT was concerned?
It was the same. I had ongoing consent. Everyone knew I had ongoing consent. The care coordinator, the psychiatrist who I met with, they all knew I had consent.
And you mentioned before, for example, when Josh was under the care of Islington and Camden, you would receive an email or a call letting you know that there was an appointment.
Correct.
Do I take it from what you've said that wasn't happening when he was under EPUT?
That absolutely was not happening. And it just got worse and worse.
You say here at paragraph 63 that you received a copy of his updated care plan on, it was dated the 17th of July. I'm not quite sure when you received it, but is that right that you were sent a copy of his care plan? Can you recall at all?
I don't recall if that's what we got from the inquest disclosure or whether it was sent to me at the time. It may have been sent to me at the time. Sorry, I don't want to mislead the inquiry with an answer that I can't definitively give. If it says that it was at the time, then that's probably what happened.
Yeah, the start of paragraph, that's why I just want to clarify it with you. Paragraph 63 says, in late July 2020, I received a copy of an updated care plan for Josh, dated the 17th of July 2020.
Okay, well then that must have been what happened. Yeah.
Can I get back to the question of the consent to communicate with you? In addition to having that written consent from your brother that they had clear instructions, did they, that you should be communicated with?
Instructions from, well, it was our wish. It
And
was my wish, and I made that clear that that was our wish, yes. But it wasn't for me to give instructions.
No.
But it was, yes, that was our wish. It was Josh's wish as well. He had expressed that to all the professionals that I should be involved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so just asking about this care plan, did you have any concerns about it?
I mean, again, it wholly failed to deal with any of the issues I had raised repeatedly at this stage with both the care coordinator and the psychiatrist when I had got to meet with them about the cycle of non-compliance and the need to come up with a Section 117 plan or some kind of strategy. It just didn't deal with any of it.
Okay. I'd like to...
And I had raised depot injections, the psychiatrists had not rejected that proposition. There was nothing in about depot injections either.
So just going back ever so slightly then about the care plan. Given that you hadn't attended the meeting, you weren't invited to attend the meeting on the 15th of July, and then you received the care plan in late July at some point, does it follow that you didn't have any input into the care plan? I don't want to make that assumption, but can you just explain it to us?
No, I hadn't seen a draft. I hadn't been consulted, apart from those meetings I'd had where I had tried to make our views known. And by that time, also, they'd had the letter from Camden and Islington saying Section 117 was appropriate.
I'd like to move on to events in August of 2020. Paragraph 66, page 15 of your statement. You refer to a professor that you had spoken to regarding Josh. Could you just explain to us why you felt the need to reach out and speak to this professor in South Africa?
So, yes, this was a family friend who was a professor of neuropsychiatry, a very distinguished one, and we just felt we were not getting anywhere with EPUT. So we were trying to reach out for some further advice as to how we could navigate this crisis. And he was extremely generous with his time, and initially met with my parents and then started meeting with me and Josh together, and also Josh separately. So we had about a dozen meetings with him over time, and he was very kind.
I want to turn then to September of 2020, paragraph 70 of your statement, page 15. You describe here at the very first sentence of paragraph 17, by mid-September 2020, Josh was really spiralling out of control. You then sent a text message on the 14th of September to his care coordinator. If we could have that on, it's there on screen. He's very unwell again. We need urgent psychiatric attention. His treatment plan is not working. Please call me urgently. And then at paragraph 72, bottom of page 15, there was a response from his care coordinator on the 15th of September. We can see that at the top of page 16. I spoke to him, meaning Josh, yesterday and arranged to see him next week. He does not want to take his medication. I will discuss with doctor soon and let you know. And then at paragraph 74, page 16 of your statement, you make reference to the depot injections again, and we spoke a little bit about that earlier. But by this stage, where had the discussions regarding a depot injection got to?
Yeah, I mean, so I kept on raising this with the care coordinator, and whenever I spoke with any psychiatrists or other professional, well, I only spoke to the psychiatrists, and I kept on raising it, and it was really, as I say here, our view had hardened that this was really the only option now, that something needed to be done to tackle this crisis. And he clearly, even when he was being prescribed antipsychotics, he wasn't taking them because he had completely lacked insight. So he was in this spiral of denial, believing he had some imaginary illness, and wanting to flee. So we had to get him back onto his meds, and that we had run out of options at that stage.
And then at paragraph 75, page 16, you make reference to his care coordinator visiting him on the 17th of September. And the text that you received from the care coordinator you sent a message to the care coordinator saying Josh is not good at all today. He needs to take his medication. It won't be available for 2 days. Can you possibly get him an urgent prescription? He is close to needing to go to hospital, I fear. And then if we turn to the top of page 17, this is still the same part of the paragraph 76, but the top of page 17, you say there that Josh had a visit from his care coordinator and that there was an assessment that took place. Can you tell us, please, what that assessment was? What did it show?
Well, I mean, we found out when we got the documents for the inquest that he had been assessed green, which I find incomprehensible. Because, I mean, clearly he had been spiralling out of control at this stage and was in need of a really proper psychiatric assessment at this stage. I don't know on what basis they made that assessment. I don't know who was there. But it was clearly completely incorrect.
And then I'd like to summarise, if I may, the interactions as follows. That you suggested a meeting with the psychiatrist, but that couldn't be facilitated until the end of October. You sent the care coordinator further message on the 22nd of September, this is at paragraph 77, asking for a meeting. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, so at this stage, we've really got to get this dealt with. We need a proper assessment. We need to get back before a psychiatrist. We really need to sort this out because it's becoming urgent. And in retrospect, it was clear that he needed, I mean, I was saying at the time, it looks as if he's getting close to being hospitalised. Actually, I think it's pretty clear, looking with retrospect, that he needed to be hospitalised at that stage because he was seriously out of control. But at the time, I was trying to do the least invasive, push for the least invasive type of intervention. And so I wanted a psychiatrist who would get him back onto his medication. And I was told, well, it's going to be a month before we get an appointment.
Okay.
And look, frankly, with the benefit of hindsight at that stage, I should have just said, I'm taking him to A&E, we need to get this guy admitted. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. But I didn't do that, and I'm one of the many things I'm kicking myself for.
Well, you certainly shouldn't blame yourself. Can I turn then to October 2020?
Yeah.
I hope you'll forgive me for summarising the interactions in this month as follows. So if we have a look at paragraph 79, page 17 of your statement, 7th of October, you sent a text to the care coordinator asking about a support worker. I would like to ask you about the support worker. What was the role of a support worker and why were you asking for that?
So, to give you a bit of context, which actually isn't in the statement, so he had a flatmate who he initially got on with very well, who he had met somewhere, I don't know where, who was sharing the rent, and that broke down because Josh was so unwell. Find out in the disclosure afterwards that the flatmate also separately had been contacting EPUT and saying there's an urgent problem here you need to deal with, which we didn't know about. And so Josh was completely panicked and saying, I'm going to be homeless, I need to find, I've got nowhere to stay, I won't be able to afford the accommodation. So at that stage I was saying, right, now we've got an accommodation problem as well, we really need a support worker to help sort this out. My parents couldn't deal with it. They were dealing with all kinds of illness and other issues, and so that's why it was a plea for help, for more substantial help in trying to sort out this accommodation issue. But it was related back to the Section 117 issue. We needed to have a holistic approach, which provided psychiatric, psychological, and social support. But none of this ever happened. I mean, as I say, I kept on raising these issues. It was like talking into thin air.
You say at paragraph 80, page 17, that there was a response from the care coordinator. What did you ascertain from that conversation?
This was Josh same old Josh wanting to flee from where he was. So all of a sudden he said he didn't want to be in Essex, he wanted to be in Suffolk. That was where he thought he would be better, even though we were, practically in Suffolk, in the part of Essex we were living in. But he thought that would be a better place for him. And then that moves on to Wales. He then decides he wants to go to Wales.
Yeah. And so if we turn to page 18, paragraph 81, on the 8th of October 2020, Josh's care coordinator visited him that day. And it says here that he did not consider that Josh was presenting with any psychotic symptoms, appearing instead fixated with his family and others around him. At paragraph 82 on that same page, on the 9th of October, you message his care coordinator, any news, Josh is in perpetual crisis and we at a complete loss. He needs more proactive help, please respond. And then around paragraph 83, you describe how Josh remained in crisis, appearing to deteriorate. And what I just want to ask you at around this time, so in terms of the chronology, around sort of the second week to the third week of October, what was Josh saying at this time?
I mean, he was in full-out crisis mode, making less and less sense, talking more and more about his illusory illnesses, and he was saying he wanted to go to Wales, and he wanted me to pay for him to stay in an Airbnb in Wales. And he ends up organising a trip to Wales on his own, and stays in some form of accommodation.
And then if we turn over to page 19, paragraph 86, for example, he then, at some stage, ends up in Reading from Wales. He's in Reading and messages his care coordinator saying, in Reading, homeless, not sure what's going on. Do you see that?
Yes. Well, that was a message he sent to Professor Soames.
Forgive me. That's what he sent to the professor.
Yeah. And then Professor Soames sent it to me.
Now, I want to ask you about the 19th of October. So if we go down to paragraph 88, just to put it into context for you, on the 19th of October, you sent a message to his care coordinator, and we can see that on the screen. If we turn over the page to paragraph 89, page 20, you make reference here to Josh being referred to the Home First team. Is that right?
So yes, so as I recall the events, then he comes back from Wales in a complete state, and is then goes to the garden shed to try and find a rope, and so is taking steps actively to carry out suicide. The ambulances are called, the police are called. That results in his care being referred to the Home First treatment. And that really was the kiss of death, literally, because they were absolutely appalling in the way they dealt with him and us.
Why do you say that? Can you give some context to that?
So their attitude was, we're the professionals, we know what we're doing, we're not interested in what the family has to say, we're going to do this without you, and our job is to keep the family away from us as much as possible and away from trying to confuse our professional analysis. So I had a number of difficult conversations with various people from the Home First team. For a start, it was very hard to track them down to begin with. We only got their number because Josh was staying in an annex to my parents' house. And so my mother just kind of came across them when they were visiting Josh. And they eventually gave her a number. And so I then used that number to kind of try and give them context, try and explain what they were dealing with. Explain just how ill he was and how he masked his illness with all these not excuses, but this talk of imaginary illness, needing to come off antipsychotics, etc., etc. And I wasn't informed when assessments were going on. I found out from Josh by accident sometimes, who was in complete crisis mode. I mean, he completely chaotic. And so various assessments were happening, and I don't know if we'll be coming on to that, including his discharge, which I find out about on the day. So the whole approach of the Home First team was one which meant that they were making profoundly ill-informed decisions throughout.
I want to ask, we talked earlier about consent. Had anything changed in terms of Josh consenting to you being informed that might have prompted them not speaking to you?
No. He had made it clear that I should be informed.
Now, at paragraph 89 of your statement, where we're still at page 20, you refer to the care coordinator speaking to one of Josh's consultant psychiatrists. This is a different consultant psychiatrist now, about the referral to the Home First team for a gatekeeping assessment. Can you explain what your understanding of a gatekeeping assessment was at this particular time?
Well, I mean, this is reconstructed from the documents, so I wasn't at the time told this meeting was happening, and I wasn't told at the time that they were considering a gatekeeping assessment. But as I understand a gatekeeping assessment, it's with a view to potential admission to hospital. But no one at the time told us they were considering admission to the hospital.
And paragraph 92, you refer to the 20th of October, where there was a meeting with the psychiatrist. I think it follows from what you say that you weren't invited to that meeting. Is that right?
I didn't know about it, and I wasn't invited. So it happens with Josh, who's at this stage profoundly psychotic. Well, he's been profoundly psychotic for months, but it's getting worse and worse. And he then, apparently in that meeting, said he was suffering from an undiagnosed autistic spectrum disorder.
You say that...
and an acute stress reaction. He was. So the conclusion, according to the notes, again, this is reconstructed from the notes, is that he did not have any overt psychotic symptoms and that Josh was likely presenting with an acute stress reaction.
And so I want to ask you then, at paragraph 94, page 21 of your statement, you refer to events on the 25th of October 2020, and you refer here at the very last sentence in that paragraph to his RAG rating, red, amber, green rating, which was red. Can you just explain to us, for context, please, what does that relate to?
So this was their assessment of how he was when they had visited him. And again, he was on his own. There was no family consultation at this point. we didn't know about this meeting, and they observed him to be in significant distress and saying that he needed someone stronger than himself to kill him. And again, according to the notes, the practitioner cut short the meeting due to concerns of his own safety. That's how serious it was. And they, at that stage, considered his RAG rating to be red. Now, at that stage, why they didn't then take him to the hospital to be admitted, I don't know. But this all came out after the event. We didn't know about any of this.
And so then...
None of this was communicated to us. Yeah.
On the 29th, if we look at paragraph 96, bottom of page 21, you say that you were due to attend a long-standing appointment. So earlier on, we'd seen in the text messages that you had asked the care coordinator for a meeting with a psychiatrist. That wasn't possible until October, I think mid to late October. We now, in terms of the chronology, are at that stage where that meeting is due to take place for the 29th of October. Did that meeting go ahead?
No, so I travel specifically to Wivenhoe, take the day off work, I think, to attend that meeting. And then we are told, once I've arrived in Wivenhoe that evening, that this meeting has been cancelled. This is the meeting I'd been waiting for, and Josh had been waiting for a month, where we were hoping to have a proper psychiatric assessment, and where I could, again, set out the history and say we really need to get him onto depot injections.
And is it
So
right?
I was very angry about that.
Was it right that another meeting was arranged for the following day, the 30th of October? And I think we can see this at paragraph 97, top of page 22, if that helps you at all.
Yeah, so none of this was made clear to me. So there was another meeting that was arranged. I thought this was some kind of short-term review within the home first team group about. I wasn't precisely clear what was going on and what this meeting was about. Again, I think I was told about it by Josh, not by the home first team, and I insist that I attend that meeting. So I'm back in London, I attend that meeting remotely. And Josh is also remote, but not really speaking very much during that meeting.
And so this is a psychiatrist, a different psychiatrist.
It's a different psychiatrist who, as I understand now, was within the kind of home first team mechanism. And I wasn't clear what that meeting was about.
And this
It wasn't said to me, this is a potential gateway meeting because we have assessed him as red and he's clearly in a very bad way and we need to think about hospital admission. None of that was made clear to me.
And this is part of the specialist psychosis team, is that right?
So, as I understand it, no. The specialist psychosis team was the meeting he should have had because that was cancelled and he was now in the home first team work stream, as it were. They fell out of the reckoning and we were now just running with the home first team. Again, none of this was explained to me at the time. So I was really trying, this is all reconstructed after the event.
Yeah. And so just help us then, in terms of that meeting on the 30th of October, how would you describe that meeting?
Again, I was having to explain things afresh to a new psychiatrist who, again, didn't seem to understand Josh's history and who was, I think we had 20 minutes, half an hour. He was clearly up against it in terms of the time he had. And Josh, he had me saying, look, this is a much bigger issue, that we need to look at the history here, that there's a serious problem with non-compliance, and I think Josh is psychotic. And Josh saying, I'm not psychotic. These meds don't agree with me. I want to come off the meds. And I want to run medical tests because I think I've got a physical ailment. And so he was presented with those two narratives. I hadn't had a chance to speak to him on my own to explain to him what was really going on. So this was all a bit of an uncomfortable conversation in front of Josh. And his conclusion is Josh should come off his antipsychotic meds, and we should just give him an antidepressant. See how that goes.
What was your reaction to that?
I was furious. I thought it was precisely the wrong thing. He had no understanding what was going on. Yet again, another psychiatrist who really didn't take the time to understand the history or consult properly with the family. So the precise opposite of what needed to happen was now happening. And I said I thought this was going to be a disaster. But he went ahead and said, let's see how it goes.
Okay.
Can I just ask you, if a layperson were to have met your brother at that stage and had that conversation, would they have been as convinced about his psychosis? Would they have detected, in your view, that this was not a well person?
Probably not, because he was able to mask his psychosis. So I think that was why it was so important that the professionals had the context from the family and from his notes to understand what was going on. He was convincing. He was convincing. He was saying, I don't have psychosis. I'm having these kind of side effects with all the medications.
Yes.
None of which I think was true. It was because he didn't want to be taking the antipsychotics. And so he was coming up with excuses as to why he shouldn't take the antipsychotics. And so unless people were taking the time to really listen to the family and to read his history, they wouldn't have come to the view that actually he was psychotic.
And he was highly articulate, was he?
He was highly articulate, yes. He was a bright guy.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very important. Thank you.
I'd like to turn... We'll revisit this topic in a moment. Turning to November 2020 then. On the 12th of November, paragraph 103 to help you and to those following your statement, paragraph 103, page 23. On the 12th of November, you describe here how there was a meeting which you were not aware of, but you became aware of it through Josh, where he was discharged. And discharged from the Home First team back to the care of the specialist psychosis team. Can you explain to us how you felt about that decision?
I mean, I'm still today absolutely furious at so many levels about this. They didn't know what they were dealing with. They'd gone from a red assessment, I think 3 weeks period previously, where he had made expressed suicidal intent. They had taken him off his antipsychotics, so he's undergoing a medication change, and then they discharge him just like that. So something miraculous has happened between their red assessment and the only material change is they've stopped his antipsychotics. And I'm telling them he's psychotic. I'm telling numerous people he is psychotic. We're not being listened to. And they then don't tell us, but they are now discharging him when he's on a medical change without... And yet by this stage, he hasn't even had a further psychiatric assessment with a psychiatrist who says, let's see how it goes, let's take you off your antipsychotics to see if he's safe. So I don't know what this was based on, why they then decide all of a sudden this guy's fine.
Did you have contact with Josh during this period?
Yeah, we're on daily contact. He was trying to convince himself that he was better, or going onto the what were basically just antidepressants. So for about a week, he was kind of maintaining his self-delusion that he was better. But within about a week, it was also clear that things were falling apart.
So I'm just trying to understand, in terms of your contact with Josh, was there anything that suggested he was better, or was it that he had stabilised or was continuing in the same chaotic, I think is the word that you used, pattern?
No, for about a week, I thought maybe he is feeling slightly better.
Was that before he was discharged, or
this was before? This was right after the meeting with the psychiatrist who takes him off his antipsychotics. So he is telling me I'm feeling better. But then the usual emails start, a text start. I've got imaginary illnesses, I need various tests, I need to go to Wales, I need to go to various places. So it's clear to me he's not better. And then the next thing I know is he's being discharged. And we're not being told about it. I mean, there really was no communication at all from the Home First team. So the effect was, what they were doing was they were discharging someone who was undergoing a change of medication, who was profoundly psychotic and at risk of suicide. That's what was happening at that point.
Okay. I'd like to ask you then about events on the 21st of November. So paragraph 110, page 25 of your statement, very bottom of page 25. So turning to the events in late November of 2020, in particular this Saturday, the 21st, can you explain what happened on that occasion, please?
If you could give me a bit more context, because it's...
Yes, so just to help you.
Yeah.
It seems here from reviewing the crisis team notes that you received retrospectively, Josh has said that he was able to buy medication and that he wanted to use that to end his life.
Yes, I mean, this is none of this was communicated to us. We found this out during the inquest, during the disclosure process. So I didn't know those disclosures had been made to the crisis team.
It says here, just to help you, at the beginning of paragraph 110, that an ambulance was called, the police had been called, and that you contacted the crisis team by phone. Does that jog your memory at all?
Yes. And I mean, there were so many communications. I think that was the time I had a very difficult conversation with the crisis team because I was so angry about the way the discharge had been dealt with.
I'd like to ask you then about the 22nd of November.
Yeah.
Paragraph 111, page 26 of your statement. This is where, to help you with the context, your mother took Josh to the Abberton unit at the Lakes Mental Health Hospital. Can you tell us about what prompted her to do that?
Yeah, so it was the night before the incident where he had threatened suicide. The ambulance had been called, so she thought, look, I've got to take him in to get a proper assessment because he's profoundly unwell. And so he then gets seen.
And the ambulance had not taken him to hospital?
The ambulance had not, for reasons I don't know, and that wasn't clear by the... from the disclosure as to why that decision was made.
So then did he have an assessment at the Lakes?
He did, yeah. And this was all during the second lockdown, I think, so it was all very difficult. My mother was quite hesitant about taking him in. But she did. And there was a second assessment.
And I believe, based on your statement here, that this was an assessment that was undertaken by a community psychiatric nurse. Is that correct?
That's right.
And there was an urgent risk review that day. Is that right?
Correct.
And I'd just like to ask you about that assessment, because I think you attended via phone. I think your mother had called you, and so you were able to listen whilst your mother was there with Josh and the community psychiatric nurse. Can you explain to us what you can remember from that assessment?
I mean, I remember that conversation extremely well. The first assessment was done by a fairly new, she wasn't a psychiatrist, I think she was a psychiatric nurse, and she really spent time to take a history from Josh and also to listen to the family's concerns. And I can honestly say that was the first professional I'd come across within EPUT who I felt was listening, both to Josh and to ourselves. So she wasn't taking his initial kind of narrative at face value. She was digging deeper. And also talking to the family, which Josh was happy for that to take place, and so she was forming a very different picture as to what she was dealing with. But then in addition, Josh made certain disclosures to her in private, which we only then found out after the event from the notes, what precisely he had said. But he had disclosed to her that he was imminently suicidal. He was fixated with ending his life by taking an overdose of malaria tablets, which he had access to. We didn't know any of this. That was never shared with us. And I mean, I recall from, I think, some other notes that he had said if he would take them there and then, he would have taken them there and then in front of her. So she had formed the view that she needed to be admitted.
I'd like to ask you about an expression that you use in your statement. It's at paragraph 113, page 26. It's the very last sentence, or the very last line of that paragraph. Insight that professional curiosity can yield. Can you see that part?
Yes.
What do you mean by professional curiosity?
She was interested in the answers, and she was willing to spend time to dig further and to kind of uncover the next layer of what the reality was behind the first set of answers. So she was curious. Whereas with all the other professionals, I felt they were just taking at face value anything that initially came out of Josh's mouth without digging further. And so it was that professional curiosity which I think enabled her to, for the first time, get a real hold on how serious the situation was.
You mentioned there it as a comparison to other services and other individuals that Josh may have encountered as not having that same professional curiosity in your view. Can we be specific about who you're particularly referring to in terms of their roles, or was it everybody that he came into contact with in EPUT? Can you be specific?
There's no other professional that I came across which showed this professional curiosity in EPUT.
Now, you mentioned...
It was kind of professional defensiveness, I would say, certainly with the home first team. And certainly in the sense with the home first team psychiatrist, it was how can I just get this patient off my roster as quickly as possible.
Can I ask you then, you made reference to Josh speaking alone with the community psychiatric nurse and that he had disclosed to her, and this is at paragraph 114, page 26, if that helps at all. He disclosed that he was acutely suicidal. He had no protective factors. There was a clear plan that he had expressed to her, and her view, as you say in your statement, is that he should be admitted to hospital. And you say here that he was willing to be admitted to hospital, and this is what you have discovered after the event, is that right?
No, he said to us there and then he was willing to be admitted at the meeting in front of us. But precisely what he said to her, we didn't discover until after the event, and it was never disclosed to the family. So we were left thinking, what's he said? What's happened? I mean, the fact that we now know that he told her he had secured the means by which to end his life, and that was never said to us. Is rather extraordinary.
I'd like to ask you then about paragraph 116, page 27 of your statement. The community psychiatric nurse recorded, and we can see it there, that Josh, towards the top of the page, Josh has continually expressed thoughts, plans and intent to end his life. And it goes on to give the details that you've mentioned, and that the community psychiatric nurse had referred him to the Home First team for a gatekeeping assessment. Is that something that you were aware of?
No, none of this was said to us.
But it demonstrates, doesn't it, the vehemence of your concerns and how vehemently you had expressed them.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we look at the top, it may help you looking at the top of page 27. How did you feel about the prospect of Josh being admitted?
We thought it was absolutely what needed to happen. And frankly, it needed to have happened months ago. And things should not have got to this state before there was even consideration of admission.
So I'd like to ask you next about that gatekeeping assessment. Are you all right to carry on?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Paragraph 115, page 27. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a bit around the paragraphs. That gatekeeping assessment was undertaken by a member of the Home First team. Is that right?
Yes.
And how was that assessment? Describe it to us.
So, I mean, I was on the phone, so I didn't see what was happening in the room. But it essentially, my take on it was that he kind of swaggered into the room going, look, Josh, I know you've had a medication change, you need time for it to work, you're fine, don't worry. And I'm getting more and more irate on the phone. Because he wasn't aware that from the moment of discharge, things had moved on substantially. And we haven't gone into this. But I had sent a letter from Professor Soames saying, Josh is clearly profoundly psychotic and you should consider depot injections. This was after the discharge from the home first team. So there was a letter from this professor who had spent time talking to Josh. And then secondly, Josh had met again with his psychiatrist who had mentioned depot injections with him and given him leaflets about it. So he wasn't aware that things had profoundly moved on from the home first team's assessment. It was clear he hadn't checked any notes either, because otherwise he would have become aware of this. So he comes in, says, no need for you to be admitted. And my reaction is, well, I'm kind of, if you're not going to admit him, you at least need to give him antipsychotics. Because he doesn't have any antipsychotics. And Josh at this time was saying he's willing to take antipsychotics.
Just pausing there, Josh saying that he was willing to take antipsychotics, what's the significance of that?
Well, previously he had been saying, I'm not willing to, I'm not psychotic, I want to come off my meds. I think by this time he had seen he was clearly not well at all, and his plan to come off his psychotics had completely failed. So I think he was realising he needed to go back on them. So he was willing to be admitted, he was willing to go back on his antipsychotics. In comes this guy from the home first team, totally dysfunctional home first team, saying, you're fine, don't worry, you need to give your medication change some time to work. And I'm at this point saying, if you're sending him home, you at least need to give him antipsychotics. To which he says, you're not psychotic, Josh, there's no doctor in the world that would prescribe you antipsychotics. At this point, I get very, very angry. And I say, you need to stop talking now because you don't know what you're talking about and you are undoing all the good that we have now done to get Josh back onto being agreed to take his antipsychotics. And I was angry, very angry. And I say, at least can he be prescribed antipsychotics so he's leaving with tablets? To which this practitioner says, it's the weekend, there are no psychiatrists around, no one can prescribe them antipsychotics, which I think was a lie. So my mother has to leave with Josh, despite all these disclosures by someone who had failed to check the notes, who didn't know what was going on, who then, I'm not sure if we're going to come into this, but gave extraordinary evidence at the inquest, which was, in my view, untrue, about that he was initially planning to admit Josh, but then became flustered, was his evidence at the inquest.
You say it was clear he hadn't seen the notes. Is it clear that he therefore had not known about the threat to commit suicide on the 24th? On the 21st.
I think that's right. I don't think he knew. I don't think he had any updated information from the time of discharge from the home first team.
On the 12th.
On the 12th. So I think he was working on a basis of complete ignorance. And then, but on top of it, how he would then ignore what the other psychiatrist or the nurse had told him.
Well, that's right, because if we look at paragraph...
it's astonishing. I mean, it's equivalent to someone coming into A&E in profound cardiac arrest, no one even checking the vital statistics and sending them home with a paracetamol.
Yeah.
That's what this was.
I wonder if we could just turn to paragraph 117, page 27 of your statement. You say here that you subsequently found out that the community psychiatric nurse had given a verbal handover to the nurse who was undertaking the gateway assessment. And it says here, community psychiatric nurse was clear that Josh could not be kept safe in the community and required a period of admission as a psychiatric inpatient, something which the family of Josh wholeheartedly agreed and Josh himself agreed. So I just want to understand, so far as this assessment was concerned, we've talked a lot about the medication, and you've described the nurse who was undertaking the gateway assessment and their view about the antipsychotic medication. What discussion was there around Josh's immediate risk to himself, given that he had made those disclosures to the community psychiatric nurse? He had said that he had a clear plan, that there were no protective factors, and that he was at acute risk of suicide. What was discussed in that gateway assessment about that risk?
Nothing was discussed. And none of what he said was explained to the family. So, and he had clearly come in the meeting with a view that Josh should not be admitted, and that he knew better. And that he wasn't going to listen to the psychiatric nurse, he wasn't going to listen to the family, he wasn't going to listen to Josh.
I wonder if you can help us then. You say that Josh left with your mother on the 23rd of November. If it helps at all, paragraph 122, page 28 of your statement might assist. How was Josh at this time on the 23rd?
So this is the Monday, I think, the day after the lakes, and he was expecting someone. He was told that someone was going to come and check on him by the gateway assessor, who refused to admit him, and no one came. So he then, I think, wrote to my mother saying, "You see, Mum, no one's come." So there was no kind of plan, even though they weren't going to admit him, as to how they were going to then mitigate the risks, even though they weren't admitting.
And if we look
I mean, it's just incomprehensible. The whole thing is just completely incomprehensible. And I just, yeah.
We can see, if we turn to paragraph 123, page 29 of your statement, a message that your mother sent to the care coordinator. Sorry to add to your very long list. We spent many hours on Sunday for yet another assessment with excellent community psychiatric nurse. And then it goes on to say, we then saw the crisis team. You had reiterated that Joshua should be put back on his psychotic medicine alongside the anti-anxiety he was on presently. We just need to keep him alive for the time, being as death is a constant on his mind at the moment, and the anti-anxiety is not fully working for obvious reasons. Can he have both medications without creating the wrong chemistry in his brain? Could it be a mild dose when the other medicine settles? Step up, last point. Josh was strange, odd tonight, making unusual movements with his mouth as he spoke. I did ask why he was doing that. His response was, I'm trying not to manipulate. I think he is losing it. Could you write him a prescription? Thank you for your help. You've obviously known Josh all of his life, and in your assessment at this time, knowing him as well as you did, how would you describe the risk that he posed to himself at that time?
Well, he was on the verge of death, and everyone could see it apart from the professionals.
Turning to the events of the 24th of November then, the day that Josh died. That morning you describe at paragraph 125, page 29, that Josh had a visit from his care coordinator that morning. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And at paragraph 125, you refer to that he would be assessed by a psychiatrist from the specialist psychosis team the next day, meaning the 25th. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, because by this time he's back in the specialist psychosis team work stream. So this long-awaited psychiatric review that had been cancelled was finally going to take place. Ironically, it was scheduled to happen the day after he died.
We can see here at paragraph 126 a message that your mother sent that day on the 24th of November. I will add that this morning, referring to the 24th, I find Josh extremely unwell, on the very edge of taking his life closer and closer. That the nurse explained it was a matter of patience. Patience is great in principle. On the edge of suicide, it amounts to nothing. He senses that the NHS, in its wisdom, will do nothing until it is too late. For this reason, he wants to go to the States or to France, a dream. We are utterly stuck and Josh will die. Waking up call, can anyone help? Later that day, you received the devastating news that Josh had died and that he took his own life that day. I want to turn to the 29th of November. Are you all right to carry on?
Yeah, I mean, he'd hanged himself. He'd also taken some substance, and I think it must have been what he had disclosed to the first nurse he had procured on the internet, which we didn't know about. So they had the knowledge, we didn't, and he died.
Would you like to take a break there? I think we'll just take a short 10-minute break, please, Mel. Thank you, Chair. We're ready to continue. Daniel, I was asking you, turning to the 29th of November 2020, we can see at paragraph 132, page 31 of your statement, if we could have that up on screen. This is a letter that you sent to EPUT following Josh's death. Setting out various concerns that you, as the family, held about Josh's care. I'm not going to read it out, but we can see that it was a detailed letter, page 31. If we go over to page 32, it continues on to page 33, and then to page 34 as well. Please rest assured that your statement will be published, and so the full content of your letter will be available for people to see. Following this letter, on the 28th of February, at paragraph 134, we can see that you sent a letter. So this is February 2021 now. You sent a letter with a list of recommendations. Page 34, it goes on to page 35. That's the letter with the recommendations that you seek to make. I want to ask you about paragraph 135, page 36 of your statement. You were sent, you say here, that there was a patient safety incident investigation. Was a copy of that sent or shared with you?
Yes, it was. It was. So, I'm sorry, Counsel, there's just one point I wanted to raise, just a point of fact that I wanted to clarify about the refusal to admit. We found out after the event from the disclosure that the last psychiatrist that Josh had seen had written in her notes both that there should be consideration of depot injections, but also that there should be a low threshold for hospitalization. Had the nurse bothered to read the notes, he would have seen that.
Thank you.
Again, we didn't know that until the inquest stage. So yes, we did. We engaged with the team. On the patient safety incident investigation, I sent them my the long letter which listed my concerns and asked a number of questions which we wanted answers to. I think we met them with the entire family, met them 2 or 3 times, and then I sent them my recommendations. And both were, the answers to the questions were entirely unsatisfactory, and the recommendations were largely ignored. And the findings of the internal investigation do not begin to deal with the serious criticisms made by the coroner at the inquest.
Well, I'm just going to move on to that because at paragraph 135, 138 of your paragraph 138, page 36 of your statement, you say that there was an inquest. It took place between the 8th and the 11th of July 2024. You attended that inquest, did you?
I did, and I gave evidence at it.
And at that paragraph that we're at, you draw a parallel between the inquest findings and the patient safety report. Can you just expand and explain what the parallels are that you draw from the two?
Well, the findings of the inquest were identifying both, obviously, the catastrophic failure, which came at the end of the process, but also the systemic failures, which led to that ultimate failure. And in particular, that essentially we had been raising these concerns for months, and there was a need to explore depot injections, and nothing was progressed. And then the inquest found that there was a gross failure at the hospital not to admit and not to offer any follow-on care amounting to neglect. None of those failings were identified by the patient safety, by the PSII report, even though I identified them as serious concerns. It was essentially exonerated, as far as I could see, the Home First team and the assessment made in the hospital, and found some fairly formalistic failings. They did identify Section 117 as there was a failure to act on that, but at the same time, in subsequent evidence, they've said, well, even though it wasn't formally acted upon, there was in effect a Section 117 plan, which I completely dispute. So we're left with a clear impression that there's been almost no institutional learning from what's happened.
You describe it in your statement at paragraph 138 as marking their own homework.
Yes. I mean, yes, it's you're getting an institution to basically investigate its own people and systems, and obviously they're going to come from a fairly defensive standpoint. So it was not an objective report, and it was pretty much a waste of time, in my view.
Why is it important? Why was this important to you, the findings of the patient safety incident investigation?
Well, I'm sure, as all the families who've come before you, Chair, want, is the lessons to be learned from these tragedies. And this is not a mechanism for learning lessons. Another way needs to be found for these investigations to happen, which are more objective. So whether it's an independent organisation doing investigations, an ombudsman, but the problem is you're getting a trust to investigate itself. Often the clinicians will know each other. These trusts are small, and obviously they're not going to come at it from a truly objective standpoint. So I don't think the system works.
So if you just put it into context then for us, in Josh's case, your experience and your evidence is that there were failings that were identified in the inquest that were not identified in the patient safety report. And as a result of that, were there learnings so far as you were able to see, and the knowledge that you had, were there learnings that arose from that?
No, they filed evidence for what we hoped was going to be the next stage of the inquest, which was a prevention of future deaths report, but that sadly did not take place with the inquest. But that evidence wholly failed to grapple with, in my view, the findings of the coroner as to the systemic problems that led to this ultimate failure. Nor did it deal with the issues that I had identified, both in my detailed evidence and also in the correspondence I had sent to EPUT.
And is this in respect of an action plan? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So, for example, I've given the Section 1107, they said, yes, there was a formalistic failure to do Section 117, but there was nonetheless a plan that amounted to Section 117. It was not a Section 117 plan, in my view, and I think in the view of any objective professional. They said, yes, we accept there was perhaps a failure to consult the family. Maybe we should have had a carer's assessment done. That was not the issue. It was not the carer's assessment that was the issue. The issue was, could we come up with a plan at the outset to deal with the problem of Josh's not being compliant with medication. They say also we should consider multidisciplinary meetings at the point of crisis. Well, yes, that would be a help. There was no content given as to what that was going to be, but there needs to be, and this is one of my recommendations, there needs to be a multidisciplinary meeting at the outset when someone is referred to the trust, so everyone gets a handle on precisely what you're dealing with in terms of the nature of the illness, which is properly informed, so a strategy can be arrived at, which avoids crises emerging in the first place.
I think we'll come on to your recommendations in just a moment.
Sorry, I've jumped ahead. Yeah.
Please don't apologise. I just want to go back slightly. In terms of the evidence that you've heard and that you've seen, in terms of the lessons that have been learnt and identified, are you confident that lessons have been learned and that action has been taken? No, I'm entirely confident lessons haven't been learnt. Why do you say that?
Because they filed evidence in response to the findings of the inquest, and they have not grappled with the findings of the inquest nor my recommendations. They just seem to get the wrong end of the stick of what I'm saying. But I'm very determined to pursue this with the trust. I'm very determined to meet with them and find all possible ways of trying to get them to understand what our experience better. And clearly I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to explain it to the Lampard Inquiry as well.
Can I just touch upon the conclusions of the inquest then? You've told us that there was a finding of neglect, that was suicide contributed to by neglect, with a narrative conclusion. And we can see at paragraph, I think it's page 37, paragraph 142, the start of that conclusion. So it starts at the bottom, yeah, that's the right page. And then if we turn over page 38, page 39 is where it finishes, and we can see the last sentence there on the basis the suicide of Josh was contributed to by neglect. I haven't gone through and read out all the detail of that narrative conclusion, but you've touched upon it and summarised it. I wonder if we can then move to page...
And the sentence before that is quite strong. This was a very serious failure indeed, amounting to a gross failure to provide basic medical care, and one that more than minimally contributed to the avoidable death of JL on the 24th of November, which is absolutely my view.
Thank you. I'd like to turn then, please, to paragraph 167, page 45. And this is where you are just slightly further down, 167, thank you, which is where you propose, you start proposing some recommendations for the chair to consider. The first paragraph 168, family consultation. I think we have covered the family consultation during the course of your evidence. I just want to give you an opportunity to expand on anything with regards to that recommendation.
Yes, I mean, I think there needs to be a culture change within EPUT, but potentially the problem extends beyond EPUT. I'm sure it does, where the family are not treated with hostility and kept at arm's length, but where their input is welcomed. Because, frankly, no one knows someone suffering from mental illness is extremely challenging, and generally no one knows the issues in more greater detail to know over such an extensive period than the family that's dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. So that information, to me, is invaluable. And one of the first things I think which needs to happen, there are obviously issues around consent which need to be navigated, is the professionals need to hear what the family has to say so they know what they're dealing with. Because otherwise they are really coming into what is a very complex situation, which is unique to every individual case, with a lot of ignorance.
And this feeds into your second recommendation, page 46, 169, Martha's Rule, and I just wonder whether you can explain what that is and how you see that fits as a recommendation for the treatment of patients within mental health hospitals.
Yes, I mean, this is a fabulous new rule that's come in thanks to the tireless work of a family whose daughter sadly died of sepsis, as I understand it. But this is where, if you're not satisfied with the decision of a practitioner, you can seek an urgent review from another practitioner. So had we had that opportunity, we would have sought an urgent review on multiple occasions throughout 2020, because we weren't satisfied with what the decisions being made were.
And this current...
But we would have particularly sought it when he was refused hospitalisation.
Sorry, I interrupted you there. This Martha's Rule, so far as you understand, is not currently operating within mental health hospitals. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding, but yes, but I stand to be corrected. If there is moves afoot to make it available to mental health services, it would be an invaluable addition. It would have made a great difference, I think, to Josh's case.
Turning then to paragraph 170, continuity of psychiatric supervision. Is there anything in addition to what's contained within your statement that you'd like to expand upon?
Well, yes. I mean, the problem, as you can tell from my evidence, is we were pinging around from one practitioner to another. Josh had a total of 3 different practitioners, only 2 of whom I met, all of whom seemed to be poorly informed and with very little time, and who didn't seem to understand his history and didn't understand and hadn't had proper handover from other psychiatrists. So it would be really important in situations like Joshua's to have a continuity of psychiatric care where you're not pinging around the system and where you're having to explain things afresh to someone who's only got 20 minutes on a virtual call, who are making life and death decisions. These are big issues and they need to be dealt with carefully. And that kind of ties in with my next recommendation as well. But really the experience we had at EPUT of just being moved from pillar to post and no one really getting a handle on what was happening, that surely we can do better than that.
And is there anything further with regards to your 4th recommendation at paragraph 171 about I know you talked about holistic support a number of times. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, it all ties in together with the first 2, because what needed to happen at the start, as I keep on saying, is there needed to be a multidisciplinary meeting with family input coming up with a strategy. So everyone understands the history, understands what they're dealing with, and understands what interventions are needed, not only psychiatric, but also psychological and social. And that's what I was trying to achieve through the Section 117 mechanism. Again, I say, had that happened at the start, everyone would have had a plan, we would have all known what we were dealing with, we would have all known what we needed to do when things got difficult. It would have been a resource saver, I think, in the end, as opposed to an extra resource, because lots of resources were spent on dealing with the crisis. This would be a way of making sure that everyone was on board with a plan, which would avoid those crises happening in the first place, and I think could reduce the amount of the hospitalisation that subsequently needs to happen when people do really get into crisis. But there was no holistic plan, there was no interdisciplinary meeting.
Turning then to paragraph 172, page 47, your 5th recommendation, the internal investigation process. I think we've touched upon why you invite the chair to make a recommendation with regards to that. Is there anything you wish to add?
Well, yeah, simply, I think the power of investigation should be taken out of trusts' hands, and I think they should be made independent.
And with regards to your 6th recommendation, paragraph 173, page 47, you recommend a national oversight mechanism. Do you just want to speak to that, please?
Well, I mean, this is a much broader issue. It's a policy issue. I know Inquest is working hard on this, but the problem with the coroners, the inquest mechanism, the coronial process, is they come up with very strong recommendations through excellent work they do, but then it disappears into the ether. And there can be a future deaths report, prevention of future deaths report, but there's no obligation on any of the parties to implement those. So you're left with a mechanism which is extremely good at fact-finding, but there's no way in which the learning of that can be implemented. And so it seems we've got an extremely capable coronial process, but that's only half the story if the lessons are not being learnt. And a national oversight mechanism, which I know Inquest is campaigning for, I think is long overdue, because as a country we need to learn from what's going wrong institutionally in our institutions.
Thank you, Daniel. Those are all the questions that I've got for you. I think we've got some photographs that are going to be shown now of Josh. Thank you very much. Chair, do you have any questions?
I've got no further questions. Thank you so much for your incredibly clear and concise evidence. It's been very, very helpful to me, so thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The whole family is extremely grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Daniel, we now have a process where we're going to wait for 10 minutes to see if there are any questions from any of the call participants. On the basis that there aren't any questions from anybody, can I take this opportunity to thank you as well very much for the detail of your witness statement that you've provided, for the commemorative account that Samuel provided in November last year. It's been very helpful to hear from you. So thank you very much on my behalf. And that will be the end of your evidence if there are no further questions. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Subject to there not being any questions, we're back here at 2 o'clock.
I believe 2 o'clock. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.